Previously, on Night of the Serpent. To enter the city of Orolunga, but not to go back in time, the heroes of Red Bazaar must scale the city walls. Dubious about Vorn's ability to climb those walls, they, somewhat inexplicably, leave the Shield Guardian behind and strike off into the ruins of the city. Orolunga sprawls with crumbled grandeur, decayed, vine-choked, and reeking of death. They cross the same bazaar that they crossed minutes and centuries ago. None of the water features function, and as they move, they are occasionally blasted in the face by sprays of putrid mud. Then, from beneath the streets, a ghoulish hand reaches up and takes a hold of 13's ankle. Initiative is rolled. Ghouls, led by a slathering ghast, spring up from cracks in the streets below and grasp at the players with their paralyzing touch. Gûlwyf is instantly gripped by fear, but manages to muscle through her terror and draws several of the creatures to her. 13 spends the combat scrambling around, climbing on walls and even ceilings to avoid the chill touch of the ghouls. It's Heck who does most of the slaying, flying above the combat and blasting the creatures with his radiant beams. The ground the party fights on, however, is treacherous, and they are wary of their every step, for this one might spray mud in their face, and that one might reveal a hidden ghoul, and this one might crack and send them tumbling into the sewers below. Eventually, they defeat the ghast and its ghouls and continue on their way through the city. After this encounter, our sleepless heroes cross Orolunga slower and stealthier, fearful of another attack. At one point, they hear a terrible grinding sound and take cover as a zombified ankylosaurus stomps through the streets, dragging its club tail behind it. At one point, they round a corner into a building packed shoulder to shoulder with dormant zombies, but manage to avoid provoking the horde. Then, the ziggurat looms before them, sludge pouring from its 10 jaguar mouths. They climb the crumbling stairs, push through the rotted hangings, and there discover Numbaza, just as they predicted, tossing and turning in a tumultuous dream. It's 13 who dares creep closer, and as soon as they come within range, Eku leaves the tabaxi and drifts towards the slumbering sphinx. After a moment, the sphinx awakens with a start, but, coaxed by Eku, does not immediately lash out at the party. Instead, they speak the code word, Yagra, and Numbaza blearily begins to recall its dream, and these 3 strangers from it. At their urging, the Commandant explains what happened on that day, what happened to bring Orolunga low. When the comet came, he says, it somehow allowed Rosnisi to raise an army of the dead from the city's necropolis and roll over Orolunga with it. It seems that during the eclipse, Dendar's power waxed, and it was through that necromancy that Rosnisi was able to break his chains, raise his army, and level Orolunga. The comet, Numbaza tells them, comes only once a century, and that, for the past 300 years, followers of Dendar have believed that that is the night when they might have a chance to resurrect their dead god. 100 years ago, Rosnisi attempted such a ritual, but was thwarted by the Chultan royal family. The problem is, that night, the Night of the Serpent, is coming, and it's coming soon. The comet is due to return in 56 days, and the party, if they wish to not only stop the dream plague, but also prevent Dendar from returning to the world, must find some way to stop it, once and for all. About 100 years ago, Numbaza tells them, in the days before the last Night of the Serpent, a messenger from the Chultan royal family, an aarakokra, they learn, delivered the Eye of Zoltek to Numbaza. This is the enormous gem, the ruby, that sits as the lens in the center of Orolunga's observatory. The messenger claimed that it was a vital artifact, a crown jewel, and that it, along with 2 others, held the key to keeping Dendar imprisoned. For his own protection, he was not told the location of the other 2 gems, but Numbaza did know that the last member of the royal family, Queen Mother Kapaka, had sought refuge at the Kir Sabal Monastery following the fall of the secret city of Omu. Could the heroes perhaps go there? This, then, is their plan. Travel to the Heart of Ubtao and the Finger of Fire, collect the crown jewels they suspect are hidden there, and then somehow use them to prevent Dendar's return. Surprisingly, it's into hex-keeping, the monk descended from the sacred race of messenger people, that Numbaza entrusts the Eye of Zoltek, the first of the 3 crown jewels they need to collect. Where next? The Heart of Ubtao, the floating temple that appears in 13's dreams, is closest. The session ends with 13 persuading Eku to remain with the party. You see, the Coatl had debated staying with Numbaza and living forever inside his dream, the Night of Serpents. But through 13's careful words, Eku was persuaded to remain with the party and help them in their errand, though under different auspices. Now in possession of the Eye of Zoltek, the party completes the Orolunga arc and levels to 6. And that's where we stopped. That's where we ended the session and the arc. So how did it go? I think it was good. I think it was a little short. It was a little slow. It was one of those exposition-heavy episodes that could normally feel kind of bogged down, but because it was the kind of information they'd been waiting for, it hopefully remained engaging throughout. It started, though, with the ghoul encounter, which I thought was pretty good. I think it was a partial success. I was kind of hoping that the gas stench would affect Heck more, but he just got lucky with his handful of saving throws. And the thing about the paralysis is that as nasty as it sounds, the DC is so low that none of the players ever really succumbed to it, or if they did, they quickly overcame it next round. I did, however, make the point that ghouls are one of the few enemies that will continue to attack a player after they've fallen unconscious and sort of chew through their death saving throws, and that added an extra spook factor, even though I don't think anybody went unconscious during the fight. Man, I was so surprised that they left Vorn behind. I don't really know why. He's a shield guardian. It's got like 22 strength. It could easily climb those walls. But somehow in their head they got this idea that it couldn't, and I wasn't about to dissuade them if we could finally get an encounter without the shield guardian around. I got to draw a map again. I enjoyed the terrain effects of the broken buildings, and especially the cracked streets. I gotta draw more maps to this campaign. It really gets me engaged in the encounter design. Honestly, though, what's funny is that I think crossing the city was ultimately scarier than the ghoul battle. H, in particular, really likes ankylosaurs and was sort of heartbroken to see the dead one. And I think that the party felt like they dodged a bullet when they avoided that room full of dormant zombies, but really those two things were both just set dressing. There was very little chance of them actually getting into a fight unless they provoked one. But I think it still had that effect of, creeping into enemy territory that I wanted. I think the Numbaza encounter went pretty well. The party has this weird tendency to kind of talk over one another and squabble, especially in front of NPCs. They don't really present a united front, which has a tendency to kind of slow down role-playing encounters and makes them a little bit less enjoyable. But here was sort of where I had to lay everything out. The, quote, Night of the Serpent, end quote, is coming. They need to visit the 3 locations from their dreams to collect the 3 crown jewels and use them to prevent Dendar's return to the world. Or so they think. So there actually is a time pressure, the characters just didn't know about it. One of the best aha moments requires a little bit of explanation. At the beginning of each session, I even do this in Yogg, I always drop the title and the recap and then the date. So I'll say, the adventure begins on the 32nd of Damani Abad, Second Reigns, in the year 299 AU. This is episode 15, Secret in the Stars. And they're hearing this every week and they're getting used to it. But what they don't realize is that that's actually very important information. That's how many days are left until the end of the year and the Night of the Serpent. They just didn't know it was important. So then they're suddenly asking me, what is the date? What is the date? Right? And I'm like, I told you, what is the date? Which was really fun and a good payoff. But yeah, that's the end of the Orolunga arc. Now the characters are level 6 and they are headed to the Heart of Ubtao for the Heart of Ubtao arc. Eku's exit was something I was kind of banking on here, but I honestly wasn't really that surprised when 13 made the attempt to persuade. I didn't want to take Eku off the table completely. I wanted to keep it as something that was still within reach of the party, so I made it a little skill challenge. If 13 could make 3 persuasion checks before they got 3 failures, then Eku would continue to accompany them. I am going to change the way that Eku works. I think the combination of them having a Coatl and a Shield Guardian is really throwing off my ability to scale, so we're going to come up with a little bit more of a mechanical answer to how to deal with Eku. She'll still be with the party story-wise, but it's just getting to be a little bit difficult for me to run all of these different monsters in a fight. And then it's harder for me to introduce new NPCs if I want to have other people accompany the party for a little bit, which I plan on doing in the next arc. But that was it. That's Orolunga. There's a little bit more of a denouement we're going to do next session. I'm also curious to see how the players are going to lug this enormous gem around with them. I think they're going to get Vorn to carry it, but maybe that will impede Vorn's usefulness in combat. I'm not really sure. But that was the session. I think it went pretty well, about as well as it could have, but I am eager to move on to the next arc and get us exploring some new territory. First, though, we're going to have to cut back across the River Tath, potentially deal with some dwarves, cross through the wasteland, and then eventually we'll get back to the Aldani Basin, where the Heart of Ubtao is. What did you think about the session? Do you have any questions about the way I'm running the campaign or the changes I'm making to Tomb of Annihilation? Have you ever introduced sort of a DM NPC into your campaign that accompanied the party wherever they went? How did it go? Were they helpful to you? Were they kind of a hassle to you? What kind of tips and tricks would you use to deal with these kinds of characters? I'd love to hear what's happening at your table. Leave a comment below and tell me about it. As always, you can subscribe to the video and tune in next week for another episode of Night of the Serpent. Until then, happy adventuring.